All right, everyone, that migrant caravan that now is topped out at maybe 10,000 people, supposedly, it depends on what source you actually read, and is headed towards the United States, slowly trudging its way ragtag mode through Mexico. Again, supposedly it's actually being supplied the whole way, but it might have some problems actually making it into the United States, because Trump has, I think very wisely, done exactly what I think 3 days ago I said should probably be done, which is that he's delegated authority specifically to General Mattis and signed an executive order meant to stop this migrant caravan. This is essentially, under any decent legal term, an invasion force. It may not be made up of people with guns or people with, like, tanks or whatever. It is essentially an invasion. A foreign group, of individuals has openly proclaimed, they've told us ahead of time by weeks, we intend to enter your country, despite the fact that you do not want us there under your legal system. Instead of going through the normal immigration process, we are going to walk across your border. We're growing in number. We intend to do this. We intend to break your laws. That is an invasion force. That's not just, hey, it's a grassroots group of a few families. Normally, illegal immigration means that a family or two are crossing in the middle of the night, or someone has paid a smuggler to walk them through the desert, preferably keep them from dying. Half the time the smuggler then kills them and takes everything they own along with the money they got from the get-go. The coyote sort of smugglers over there, but that's the way it works. That's typically what happens, small groups of people, because the idea is you don't want to get caught going across the border, because you'll get detained. Now, under Obama, that wasn't a problem, because they had catch and release. Under Obama, you could come over plain as day, and as long as you physically made it across the border, they'd cuff you, put you in a van, do very little in the way of actual processing. Week later, you're out on the streets. They don't send you back to wherever you're from because you don't have paperwork proving where you're from. See, the U.S. government didn't want to have to deal with the fact that it would have been impossible to tell, is this person, if they're not willing to tell us and they don't have paperwork, which they probably don't, are they from Mexico, Honduras, Belize? We don't know, so it's going to be difficult to repatriate them to their prior country. You have a migrant caravan, though, right now, originally comprised of a few thousand Hondurans, that was joined by a bunch of other Central American groups and probably by some Mexican individuals by now, I would assume. Considering the rate of growth, there are probably a few thousand people from the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico there too. There are probably people from El Salvador. There might be Panamanians, Venezuelans. It's impossible to tell because you got to realize there are also illegals in Mexico. There are millions of people that live illegally there from especially places like Venezuela and Central America. Mexico's got that problem too. That's why their own president wants to beef up their border security. Any number of those people could be joining this caravan. They're like, hey, I came here illegally. I'm already screwed basically on that token. Why don't I just join this caravan? I've got a better chance of making it into the United States because, who's going to do anything about it? But Mattis now has 800 U.S. troops to deploy on the border to stop this caravan. Trust me, 800 U.S. troops. I believe an entire airborne group, if I remember, an airborne army group, will be working directly for him to stop this. Now, the hope is that by simply deploying troops on the border, by making sure people know, hey, we don't want you coming in here illegally, the hope is that they'll actually not try to enter. The general hope is that alone, the threat of reaction, will dissuade them. I doubt that that'll happen. I think what's more likely to happen is you'll have 10,000 or more people mobbing the border and trying to storm across. At that point, you have to disperse them, probably with rubber bullets and tear gas, hopefully with no lethal force. I don't wish any harm to these people. And it is likely, again, they will probably form up a group in which pregnant women carrying toddlers on their backs will be in front. That way, the U.S. troops are going to be more difficult to fire on a crowd if that's happening. Might have literally no choice but to stand aside and then one by one detain these people as they step across the border. Once the pregnant women and their toddlers are detained, of course, the rest, it's like, just disperse the young fighting-age males, I suppose. The liberals right now, though, are still continuing to do the same thing, which is that they're not actually saying what they would do in such a situation. Would you mobilize troops? Would you have border control beef up wherever they're expected to enter? Would you talk to the nation of Mexico and say, hey, this is your problem too? They're not from your country. They already illegally went across your border. What are you going to do about it? What would the liberals do? Trump has made it clear, if these people come across, they'll be detained. That's more than any of the Democrats have done. It's like, I know what they would actually do. They'd say, well, these are our brothers and sisters. We must let them in and give aid and comfort to the tired and poor huddled masses. Like Kasich comes out yesterday. He's trying to be big dick man, and he comes out and says, well, Trump is... I had expected that Trump would act in a civil manner. I've lost hope of that. And by the way, we need to take mercy on this migrant caravan. I'm like, mercy? Okay. Why don't we then mercifully go in and lodge complaints with their governments and say, fucking step down and hold a new election and get rid of the socialism that's caused all of the mess in your countries that caused this in the first place? It's socialism's fault these countries operate on far-left, centrally planned economic principles. Redistributionist, centrally planned. Get rid of those governments. You won't have that problem anymore. Brazil's about to solve its problems. They're about to get Bolsonaro in there. There will be at least mild reform. Venezuela. Why is Venezuela collapsing? It's because of central planning. Specifically, shitty central planning. You've got these monoculture economies. The only way in which they're ever going to reasonably diversify is through an extremely free market period of time in which foreign investors can diversify it because they have the wealth to do so. The domestic economies of many of these Central American and South American nations are not capable of diversifying on their own. Like, for instance, Venezuela. Biggest oil reserves in the world. Rather crude oil, if you know what I mean. Kind of dirty oil, but extreme amounts. Oil prices are high. They're raking in money hand over fist. Instead of borrowing against their oil to build infrastructure and increase the agricultural sector and increase maybe light manufacturing and stuff like that, what ended up happening? Chavez and then Maduro, they're like, yeah, we'll give people microwaves. Therein lies the problem. These socialist-style economies, and these, in some cases, left populist economies, in all honesty, ingratiate themselves to voters by giving free shit away or subsidized shit, and always ignore the fundamental underlying economic issue of, hey, what's our economy? It's pineapples. What's our economy? It's cigars. Cuba has that problem. What's our economy? Some seafood, tobacco, and inhalers. That's all we've got. What's the Venezuelan economy? Crude oil. Monocultures. They're not diverse economies. That's the problem. That's why Brazil has an advantage. You've got enough diversity already in your economy that you can continue to further diversify. Yes, you should privatize Petrobras. Absolutely, you should privatize everything you can. Get foreign investment into your country. People here would love to invest in Brazil. You know, get out of BRICS, because otherwise you're going to squander it all on membership there. What do you think China sees you as? They invest a little bit now and then they leech you. Fucking the Chinese government will come in like a mosquito and suck the blood right out of your cock. That's what they're doing in East Africa right now. Yeah, we'll build factories, we'll build roads. We're the only ones with the money to use them. We're the managers. Look, you know, all the native Africans employed in these Chinese factories, 1 in 1,000 of them might be making a decent wage. Enough is enough. That's not going to happen with U.S. investment. Mainly because people there, primed to see us as the great Satan, I suppose, would probably protest more than, you know, the benevolent communist China. You know, and then China comes in, and then you realize how malevolent it really is. No, these countries have their own problems. Solve the fucking problems there. Why don't these 10,000 people amass in front of their capitals in Central America and demand reform? So that you're not poor and unemployed. Yes, I have great sympathy for you. Kasich comes out and he says, like, what was it he said? He said, well, this could be us. We could be the ones marching north. Absolutely, John! That's why we want to avoid socialism in this country, so that doesn't happen. We've already got a stable economy. Look at our economic growth. Things are going just fine. Wages are rising. Unemployment's down. Yes, part of that is labor force participation. That's starting to solve itself. That's starting to become less of a problem. Understood, by the way. The liberals are totally true when they say that. It was a problem under Obama. They never mentioned it at the time. But yeah, that's partially what's responsible. But wages are up. Unemployment's down. The job market is recovering. The middle class has begun to expand again. Manufacturing is starting to trickle back into the United States. That's because of a more free market. There's no free market in the world, but it's more free. It's less intervened in. It's less hyper-regulated now under Trump, and he happens to cause higher consumer and business confidence. Name some things that Guatemala doesn't have. Oh, all of those things. Therein lies the problem, John. Mr. Kasich, that's what we're seeking to avoid. So you're trying to treat symptomatically. You're like, oh, look at these poor, starving, huddled masses. I feel very sorry for them. Go in and kick their government's ass out and restore actual, properly functioning free market economics there, and pretty soon you won't have a problem with Central American migrants. You won't have it anymore. Look, you look at Central and South America. Look at the economies that variously throughout time have done okay. Which countries are they? Oh, Chile, right after purging literal communism, right after adopting an extreme free market and in some cases, admittedly, corporatistic model. Why do you think they got more developed than the rest of South America at the time? You look at Colombia right now. Again, reforms have been implemented there. There is relatively less redistributionism. Their economy is beginning to pick up. Making a deal with the FARC rebels definitely helped too, in all honesty. Then there was that one, which one? Was it Nicaragua or maybe it was Guatemala? I can't remember which of the Central American states it was. Fairly recently when Ceylon came out and tried to declare it a fascist country, even though it operates under literal democratic socialism, like literally self-described as a socialist nation with economic backwardsness. And they're like, oh, no, it's actually fascism and populism that's responsible because reasons. No, it's not socialism when it begins to fail. See, you see the same shitty line over and over and over. I feel very sorry for the migrants. It's much like in Europe. And people are invoking Europe. It's not exactly the same. You gotta understand that. In Europe, I feel very sorry for millions of displaced Syrians. I feel very sorry about that because my own government largely caused that by partnering with the FSA and bombing things over there. Feel very sorry for you. If it weren't for our ineptitude, it wouldn't have been a problem. Look, Assad delved into the concept of a little bit of a free market. Yeah, preferable to the alternative. You've got a situation where you got some shitty dictators in charge. Well, less shitty than the alternative. Now all of a sudden you have a bunch of migrants, but the answer is not to bring them all and repatriate them to Europe. They don't want to be there. They wanted to be left alone in Syria. And now you've got the additional problem, and it's just like the problem with this migrant caravan. We no longer know exactly where these people are from. Some of them, indeed, they're from Honduras or Guatemala. Some of them, I guarantee that there are at least 1,000 people from Mexico in there. There are almost certainly Venezuelans in there. Some of these people are not just simple, well, I'm trying to escape poverty. Some of them will be cartel members. Some of them will be militants. It would be statistically abnormal if in a group of 10,000 people from that region you didn't have a few people in there that were murderers. Hell, you find 10,000 Americans, there'll be a few murderers sprinkled in there. Maybe it's involuntary homicide, but there are a few people who have taken lives in there. So thank goodness that Mattis is involved, because what'll happen is that he'll respond. And he'll be able to take the lumps for the media, like Trump already referred to him as basically a Democrat who might be on his way out. Can you say it's a last sort of act for Mattis? It's like, hey, here, when you leave, I'll give you $1 million. All you have to do is play bad guy to the media for a few weeks. Don't worry about it. Fucking buy your own island. That'll definitely take heat off the situation. That's about all. Peace out.